Are trying this again, 15 past 3 o'clock hour, a Wednesday edition. I apologize for that, guys. The Wednesday edition of On Cue. Rich Quinones here. Now we got you pumped up on Odyssey, SR 1029 FM, the game. And that's the issue sometimes with the software, the platforms that we're using. Sometimes they are absolutely what we like to call hit or miss, but that's okay. All right. So, get in on the conversation. Get in. Come on. Let's do it on a Woosah Wednesday. We got about an hour plus to play with. And again, we got you guys locked in. If we just lost you on X, we welcome you back into, the conversation. So, as I mentioned, very busy Wednesday. I wanted to fire off a little earlier today. Obviously, we were not sure if we were going to be on the air today because of the hoops. And again, we've got that a little later on in the day, but I wasn't sure if we were going to get in at least, 45 minutes to an hour. And I was like, you know what? It's a Woosah Wednesday. We know how we play it on a Woosah Wednesday. Get social with us at Rich Q on Q. You can tag along on Kicks, Rumble, YouTube channel. I already see you guys on X. I apologize for that. Like I said, not on my end. Sometimes the software gets a little wonky, but we fought through it. So we've got X, Rumble, Kicks, LinkedIn, YouTube, SR 1029 FM, the game, Coastal Sports Digital Network, Odyssey. You got a boatload of opportunities to check in with me. And as always, at Rich Q on Q, XIG, TikTok, Rich Q on the mic. It is a Wednesday edition, as we like to call it, a Woosah Wednesday. How long is it going to take? And already a bad start for you guys to get under my skin on this day. So a lot of NFL. We want to get into that. And how about this? A potential change of plans for some of these teams when we're talking about the draft. And now it comes down. Well, first of all, John Harbaugh has met with the New York Football Giants. I'll give you my thoughts on that. We've got the Stefanski potential news coming down, has met with the Miami Dolphins. You got Brian Flores' names being tossed around, the Kubiaks, the Clinsbury. Obviously, the Eagles need a new offensive coordinator. As we told you yesterday, right around 3:30-ish, that Kevin Patullo was finally out. And then the news drops today that Oregon quarterback Dante Moore has decided that he is basically opting against a draft and he's returning back to school. He's returning to the Ducks. Now, what's interesting here is everyone thought Fernando Mendoza from Indiana and Moore from Oregon, they were going to go 1-2 when we've got the draft in April. 1-2. And the Raiders and the Jets subsequently get the pick 1-2. So the Raiders are definitely going to draft Mendoza. But now if you're the Jets, your plan A of trying to get a quarterback in Moore, now all of a sudden you got to basically rip that up and probably go the bridge route. And I actually think that might be the best course of action for the Jets. And we will get into that a little bit as well. But as far as the Harbaugh situation with the Giants, I've been thinking about this, kind of going back and forth and kind of playing it in my mind a little bit, that I would love for the Giants. There's reports coming out that the Giants are going to be extremely aggressive. The Giants are pretty much going to make a big offer to John Harbaugh. And I know there's a couple schools of thoughts here. And then obviously, listen, I'll carry over and piggyback the conversation with Tomlin stepping down with Pittsburgh yesterday. But I think there's a couple schools of thoughts here. So I don't believe the Giants, contrary to what many people might believe, I don't believe that they can screw this up. I don't believe the Giants are that poorly run of a franchise where you have John Harbaugh in the building and you can't make it work. I think if John Harbaugh is not interested in the Giants, it's because John Harbaugh is not interested in the Giants. That's what I honestly believe. So it's like, if you've ever walked in that building before, they know exactly how to entertain a guest. And the pitch is, it's a storied franchise. We're going to pay you your $20 million. You're going to have some say. You've got a young quarterback, NFC East. Here we go. Major market. Can you handle it? Do you want to deal with it? Are you a New York kind of guy? So those are all kind of like the selling points. But for the paranoid Giant fan, for the insecure Giant fan that thinks, oh my God, what's going to happen with some of these other teams? They might offer John Harbaugh um, more money. That might happen. But it's not going to be because of what they don't do. It's not going to be because they didn't know how to entertain the guest. The pitch to sell, it's the Giants, it's Big Blue, it's a historical franchise. Now bring it back to being relevant, credibility. You've got some pieces to play with. And maybe that conversation is also with Joe Shane. Hey, listen, do I have some say over personnel in the draft picks? I don't believe you can screw this up. I think if John Harbaugh decides it's not a fit, it's because of the other, elephant in the room, the news that's been dropping, the rumor mill connect the dots. He's pretty tight with Matt Ryan. Matt Ryan is now taking over the Atlanta Falcons. So the Giants get first crack at Harbaugh. Now you see, okay, he's loyal maybe to Matt Ryan. He really likes Matt Ryan. He respects Matt Ryan. Maybe he decides this is the place I want to be. So there's so many different schools of thoughts when it comes to this, right? Too many. But I just think ultimately you got to play it close to the vest. And the fact that the Giants get first crack, I think is a good thing. Some people might look at it, oh, I want it to be last so I can really blow the top off. Well, that's not always the case. And I ultimately believe that if Matt Ryan really wants John Harbaugh and John Harbaugh is tight with Matt Ryan and they have a mutual respect, right? And now it's kind of unfinished business. I'm the new Falcons president of operations. I'm going to rebuild this. We're going to actually take on the guy that we need. And that's going to be who? John Harbaugh come in, young team, good offensive players. That's a weak division. We can kind of run that division. Maybe we need to step up a little bit. We know Carolina's on the rise, but who you're really scared at the rest of that division? Again, an older Tampa Bay team, a Saints team. So, listen, the Falcons are right in play for the John Harbaugh sweepstakes. They are right in play because they have a relationship. When you have a relationship with someone and you're comfortable with someone, you want to do right by that person. If you're buddy, I want to help you secure a gig. I want to help you secure a job. And now you also got to bring in the third team, which potentially from the betting public and the book saying the Tennessee Titans. So you got the Giants, the Falcons, and the Titans. But point is, for those already chiming in, those have kind of messaged me over the last 24, 48 hours, paranoid, scared that somehow the Giants will drop the ball here. I don't see that. I think you're doing a disservice. You're doing a discredit to the Giant organization. Yeah. Have they've had some blunders? Absolutely. But when you walk in the building and you see the Lombardis and the Mystique and the Wall of Fame and the retired numbers and the jerseys, and you know about Giant history, that's your sales pitch. That's your selling point. I mean, it's the elevator pitch, and all of a sudden it's selling itself. It's selling itself. And listen, reports have kind of come out that Harbaugh is interested in the idea of coaching Jackson Dart and Cam Ward. But he's looking at overall talent, and Atlanta's got some decent talent, do they not? They do. And I'm telling you, they are built to compete instantly in the NFC South. They are. Now, the other report is coming out that he wants to pick his own GM. Now, the Falcons are the only team of those three that I mentioned that have a GM vacancy. So, listen, it's a lot to unpeel, a lot of layers, clothing to unpack. But I just believe, I think the Giants will knock it out of the park. And if Harbaugh decides it's not for him, it's not for what they're not doing or what they didn't do, is my point. Then you have Flores' name being floated, Stefanski interviewing with the Miami Dolphins, and then the Philadelphia Eagles, who once again get rid of another offensive coordinator. But yet, the head coach is still in place. The head coach is still out there. Now, There's reports that the Eagles reached out to Mike McDaniel, former Miami Dolphins head coach, and former Giants head coach Brian Daboll as the top of the list, right? As the top of the list. Now, this is why I think this is fascinating. This is why I think this is really fascinating, because you have two head coaches or former head coaches in Brian Daboll and Mike McDaniel that both kind of came in guns a-blazing, so to speak, right? You know, that quick burst of success, especially with Daboll, coach of the year, 9-7-1, resurrect Daniel Jones, get the best out of Saquon. You go on the road, you beat Minnesota in the playoffs, and then you get humbled because you're not ready for prime time against Philadelphia Eagles. Then you got McDaniel and the offensive mind and the weapons and Tua and Hill and running the football and all this nonsense. Right? I always find it interesting when there's a coach or coaches that have been fired, that have had a little split second of success. Now they have to go back to the drawing board, and they're going into a situation that can be very beneficial to them. Now, hear me out. The Eagles as a whole, you're talking about a franchise that just won the Super Bowl, right? Last year, I should say, defending Super Bowl champs. Obviously, pardon me, they're not in the playoffs. They're out of the playoffs now, but they've had a ridiculous amount of success. And where it becomes interesting, when you have a guy like Nick Sirianni, that I think people look at Nick Sirianni and just say he is a placeholder. That's all he is. Nick Sirianni is a placeholder. Nick Sirianni is not going to do anything to blow you out of the water as a head coach. He's not. He's not going to do anything that makes you say, oh my God, you know, this guy's blowing me out of the water. This guy's an innovator. This guy's a genius. This guy's an unbelievable mind, offensive mind, defensive mind. But now you're bringing in guys who have an offensive background to a team that has an anemic offense, but has some stud players, stud position players. And these potential candidates have what under their belt? Head coaching experience. It's always fascinating to me when you go and you get a head coach that just flamed out or flamed out after a couple years, but you believe can be a very good coordinator, whether it's offensive side of the ball or defensive side of the ball. And you stick them in a coaching staff where maybe you're looking around saying, you know, if worst case scenario, and we got rid of the existing coach, I have no problem inserting guy A or B right there as the interim head coach, and let's see if we can sign him to a long-term deal. Let's see if he can take the reins over. Point is, the Eagles bringing a guy like Brian Daboll and or Mike McDaniel, I think that's telling. I do. I think that's very telling. Or even a Stefanski. I think that's telling on what they feel, believe, and envision or foresee going forward with Nick Sirianni. Because the last thing I want is looking over my shoulder. If I'm a quarterback and a vet and I know my contract's coming up, it's incentive laced, bonus laced, all this stuff, I got to show out. I got to sell out. I got to have a good season. But I'm coming off an injury. I'm 36 years old. And all of a sudden, you guys draft a quarterback, a young kid, and I'm looking over my shoulder. Well, the only way I prevent this kid, from taking my job is to outperform in training camp, to win the quarterbacking job, to win the starting job, i.e. go back many moons ago. What did Doug say to Sam Bradford? Well, hey, you don't want to look over his shoulder. You got to beat out Carson Wentz. And we know the rest is history. Now, obviously, both quarterbacks are journeyman quarterbacks and flamed out. But point is, I don't want to look over my shoulder. You really think a head coach wants to worry about bringing in some guys that have coaching experience already, understand the rigors of the NFL, have been there before, had a moderate an inkling of success, and oh, by the way, I'm going into the season as a hot seat? I'm telling you, that's fascinating to watch, because any guy they bring in that has that type of experience, that might bite them in the ass. All right, 31 past 3 o'clock hour. We're cranking up. I'm glad we were able to fix out the audio with the platform. Again, you can capture me on Kicks, X, YouTube, LinkedIn, SR1029 FM The Game. We're going to be firing off on Rumble, Facebook as well. A couple other platforms that we are going to dive into. We got a lot of comments coming in. I want to get to your comments. Do not go anywhere. Little Power Hour edition on a Wednesday edition of On Cue from my good friends over at Fresh Roasted Coffee, Three Brooks Bourbon, Get Ready with Tea, and of course, Played Against Sports. I'm going to get to your comments on the other side. We're going to read them all off. We'll have a little fun, little banter as we typically do. 15 pass into the show, 3:32. Quick timeout. We will come back on the other side. Keep the comments rolling along. A lot of NFL to dive into on this day. All right, don't forget, we mentioned Play It Again Sports, 2 locations, 1450 Clemens Bridge Road in Deptford, New Jersey, and, of course, the new store in Mount Laurel. And they want me to remind you about their sales, about what they actually offer you guys. As soon as you walk in, first of all, the Deptford store is amazing. All you got to do now is walk in, a little merchandise. They're looking to buy your quality sports gear right now. We're interested in baseball, hockey, golf, lacrosse. Bring it in. Let the team take a look. Easy and fast. Pay you right on the spot. Get paid for your gear. As I mentioned, check them out online as well. PlayItAgainSports.com. 1450 Clemens Road in Deptford, New Jersey, and in Mount Laurel. All right, let's see what the crew has to say on this Wednesday. Where are we starting? Now, look at that. New headphones. Who this? Heat 12 man. Who this? AKA Heisman, AKA Steeler Nation, AKA Duval, also known as Vince. What's going on, Vinny Boombots? How are you, brother? Appreciate you chiming in as always. And chimes in Rich. I'm sticking to it. I've been saying it. I think the new GM for them, Dolphins, is going to try to trade for Matt LaFleur, and John Harbaugh goes to the Packers. All right, so let's rewind this, Anth. Hold on a second. So so you're talking about who? You're saying right now the Dolphins are going to try to put together, which is very rare we see in the NFL, packaging picks for a head coach, right? Packaging picks for a head coach. We've seen it with Sean Payton. We've seen it in the past. So it is a rarity, okay? So what you're suggesting right now is that you're talking about LaFleur trade picks. Now, he's still under contract with the Packers. Again, the issue is that the contract extension talks basically have, stalled after the playoff loss. So now, trading a head coach, you are trying to get a bundle back in draft capital. We've seen this. Sean Payton, first, third round picks. Bruce Arians, 6th, 7th, right? What type of deals? The Browns are in play. If you're going to talk about that, then, Ant, you got to mention the Browns. Because if the Browns want to make a splash, then, yeah, they can also be a team that decides we're going to trade for Matt LaFleur, which it's rare, but we've seen it. So let's just pull it up one more time. So they'll trade for him, and Harbaugh goes to the Packers. So Harbaugh goes to the Packers. You got a historic franchise. You are getting back Micah Parsons off that injury. You've got a young quarterback. You've got some weapons. Harbaugh, can you see him in that type of division? NFC North, snow, nasty football rivalries? Perhaps. I don't put anything past these guys or these teams. We mentioned it yesterday. So any idea you guys are throwing out, I'm not going to dismiss it. I'm not going to call it crazy because this is the NFL and stranger things have happened. What would be a shocking choice for Harbaugh if he doesn't choose the Giants or the Falcons? I don't think it's really a question of, see, that's where I've kind of gone back and forth with the Giant fan. If Harbaugh does not want to choose the Giants, it's not because of something the Giants didn't do or should have done. I believe now you have to throw in the connection with Matt Ryan and the Atlanta Falcons, and that could potentially be a landing spot for Harbaugh as well. So it's not, I don't think it's shocking if he doesn't choose the Giants. Maybe Atlanta and blank turns around with that checkbook. We're not going to give you 20. I'll give you 22. I'll give you 21. And yeah, we also want you to have a little bit of say. We want you to have a little bit of say. And then, as I mentioned, the Titans might be in play too. It is the John Harbaugh sweepstakes. Now, if Tomlin decided, I'm going to coach this year, then you throw Tomlin's name into the mix with some of these teams as well. And I think what the Giants are doing, you bring John Harbaugh into the building and you have to play the I'm not going to let him out of the building card. Now, you don't want to drop your pants too much and come off as very desperate. You don't, right? Because we know about bidding, we know about leverage, we know how it works. Well, all of a sudden he walks out of there making another $2 million a year, $22 million, and they had a set price of 20 because they look at the market of some of these head coaches. But sometimes teams, they're overzealous. They do misplay or overplay their hand, and sometimes they are desperate. I don't believe the Giants are that. I can see the Jets doing that. I can see that. And if you're going to go for broke, then that also tells me you're going to have to give John Harbaugh some say in player personnel. So, like, for instance, I'm John Harbaugh. I love everything you're pitching me. You guys are the Giants. I'm John Harbaugh. I love it. Okay. I have a couple questions for you, Mr. Mara, Mr. Tish. GM, I know Joe. You brought back Joe. Will I have say in the personnel? Can I, push back a little bit? Will there be any problems? Because Harbaugh does have an ego. Harbaugh has a strong personality. And when you already have a GM on thin ice and you're bringing a guy like an alpha male in Harbaugh, then sometimes there can be a little bit of a pushback power struggle. Now, if I'm Joe Shane and a guy like John Harbaugh walks in the building, I'm not saying tap around. I'm not saying, be submissive. But what I'm saying is, damn, this guy can make my life a lot better. This is a football guy. He's a football lifer. Yeah, I want to get his input on draft picks. I want to ask him. I want to have conversations with him. Some people, they realize you got to look long term. You got to think long term. You got to play the long game. And if a guy like Joe Shane that comes off as a little smug, arrogant, too cool for school, too smart for the room, I don't like that. That doesn't fly with me. You're going to bring in a Hall of Fame head coach, whether it's a guy like a Harbaugh or, say, in another world, a guy like Tomlin or Coughlin or Andy Reid, whomever, guys that have won before. And yeah, they might have a strong personality and ego, but I'm going to learn. I'm going to grow, and I'm going to have job security. Hell, if I'm bouncing stuff off John Harbaugh and we're nailing draft picks and we go from 3 wins to 7 wins to 10 wins to a playoff win to an NFC championship, guess what? I'm going to get extended as a GM. And I might find myself with the Giants for 15-something, 20 years like Howie Roseman's been with the Philadelphia Eagles. Sometimes you got to check the ego out the door. Now, I'm not saying Harbaugh is going to do that, but if I'm Joe Shane, I'm playing the game because that means I can be employed. I'm not saying roll over and eat you know what, but what I'm saying is play the game. Yeah, we want your input. Hey, John, look, I know your track record. I know I've had some hits with the draft. I know I've had some misses, but I'll tell you what, your input, it's priceless. It's invaluable. Now, typically guys like that, they're not going to say that. But I'm just, again, that's kind of the way I'm reading the room, if that makes sense. That's all. That's the way I'm reading it. I don't understand the rush to hire fired coaches. Be bold and find your Tomlin, McVay, LaFleur. The group think in the NFL. Oh, did I lose you on that one, Vince? I think that was it. I don't know if you finished your comment, but I would like to know. I don't think it's a rush. So you mentioned find your next. Well, there's really not a next Tomlin, McVay, or LaFleur. And Harbaugh started as a special teams coach. Ben Johnson's not available. I feel we don't know what the thinking is. We don't. We don't know what these GMs what they're thinking. But I can tell you this, having spoken to GMs and being around players and head coaches, I know that when they have bad seasons, it it almost as though it's like their heart, their soul is infected, and it chews at them. It just absolutely it just gnaws at them, or it's like you go nuts. You got that scratch, part of your back that you can't reach, and you're just going, you're trying it's just driving you crazy. They can't stand losing football, bad product. Fans want to revolt. Not being able to compete in the division, watching other teams win championships. The Giants are sick and tired of it. They're sick and tired of it. So when you say, what's the rush? I don't think it's rush. I think they believe, wow, this guy's on the market. This is the guy that can help us. Like, they need to turn it around now. They need to turn it around now, not later, not tomorrow, not next week, not next month, now. Right? Remember when Andy Dufresne escaped and the warden was like, I don't want him found after breakfast. I want him found now. Right? And by that time, he was strolling into Banks at Maine, a guy no one ever laid eyes on before. Right? The Giants need to hire John Harbaugh. And they have to set it up where we're not going to allow this man to leave the building. And I'll say it on the air, and I'm going on the record. If in 2-3 years it bites them in the ass, then I'll deal with it then. But they're a franchise that needs credibility. They need to sell the fan base on something positive. They need to show the fan base and also the players within that locker room, we mean business. We are bringing in someone that has the body of work, the resume, the track record. That's why I believe, it's not a rush. I think it's a smart play, and that's why they're going to try to throw everything at him. That's just what I feel. That's my opinion. And I'm sure these other franchisers are thinking the same thing. Kingsbury, I would bring in as a coordinator. If I'm the Eagles, I would look at that. If I'm the Giants, I would look at that. Absolutely. I would do it. I would do it in a heartbeat. He's a good offensive mind. He's a good offensive mind. So, yeah, I would do it. Absolutely. Some of these guys, they flamed out as head coaches, but it doesn't necessarily mean that they can't get back there and be decent head coaches. Like, a landing spot, is it a bad landing spot for Mike McDaniel or Brian Daboll to be offensive coordinator of the Philadelphia Eagles? That's not a bad landing spot. It's not. That's a great landing spot. You're the Philadelphia Eagles. You are ready. You've got a ready-made championship defense. You're going to pay young defensive players, and you've got weapons on the offensive side of the ball. Sure, you missed out this season, but you still got ridiculous playmakers deciding what you're going to do with A.J. Brown. You got Smith. You got Goddard. You got another young tight end, Calcaterra. You got a couple other receivers. You got Bigsby. You got Saquon. You got Jalen Hurts. You got the offensive line. Hell, you go from 14 to 18 to 25 points a game. Innovative. Here you go. Brian Daboll would love that. Now I can stick it to the Giants even more so. McDaniel would love that. Now I can show these guys that I'm a very good offensive coach, and now I got a quarterback. I didn't have a quarterback in Miami. Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. I would do it. I would do it. That's just me. But, these guys make their own decisions. Ravens fan chimes in. What's going on, brother? Quick question. Brian Burtson and O'Connor. Yes. Oh, yeah, they locked him up. That's a 5-year deal they locked him up to back in 2024. He's a great player, all pro. Great player. That was a monster contract, $141 million. So it runs through 2028. He's averaging about $28 million. Big time player. Yep. I felt bad he didn't get the recognition that he deserved, but that's the NFL for you. I assure you the Steelers will not be hiring a fired head coach like Flores. I can't see Brady doing it again either after Field or Carroll. So bad. But so a couple things here. Brian Brian Flores, there's a reason he hasn't gotten a lot of interest. And I mean, when I say that, I don't per se know the reason, but Flores is a very good defensive coordinator, and you're kind of missing out on one thing with Pete Carroll. That was almost like the package kind of deal. It was almost like the package kind of deal. So you bring over Pete Carroll. We know we need a quarterback. Man, look what he did with Geno Smith. Man, if we can milk Geno Smith 2, 3, 4 years, and we can get kind of that prime Geno that we saw in Seattle, and he's comfortable with Pete Carroll, who resurrected his career, bring him over. It flamed out. Pete Carroll lost the job. Okay. First of all, they weren't going to give it to Antonio Pierce. I don't care that they beat Kansas City on the road on Christmas because they ran the friggin' football. It wasn't happening. And the last couple of years with Seattle, the message fell on deaf ears with Pete Carroll. So what did they do? They hire him January. 2 months later, they go and they trade for Geno Smith. And also, Pete Carroll retained Patrick Graham, who I know very well, Giants coordinator. He also turned around and brought in Chip Kelly. Remember? It just, the moves did not work out. It just didn't work out. Flores is a very good defensive coordinator. Now, I don't know if he just has a reputation. Forget about, the suing of the NFL. I mentioned this in nauseum. Al Davis used to sue the NFL 3 times on Sunday and every day, Monday to Friday. Or maybe he just doesn't come off a certain way. Maybe in the short interviews that he's had, he hasn't interviewed well, kind of like an Eric Bieniemy. I don't know. But Brian Flores is a hell of a defensive coordinator. He's a hell of a defensive coordinator. And to your point with Brady, so then what route do they go? Are the Raiders, as shocking as this going to sound, is that a landing spot? If Harbaugh wants to be enamored with a young quarterback, well, here you go. You're going to have Fernando Mendoza. I mean, can that be the team that pulls the wool over everyone's eyes? Now, you can argue, Sarge is a big Raiders fan. He said, Q, I hear what you're saying, but I got to go in a different direction. Okay, well, expand on that. Expand on that. Because I know, again, listen, I think we toss around great too much. I think Harbaugh is a very good head coach. Tomlin's a very good head coach. Andy Reid is a great head coach. I'm okay with that. It's hard to, grab that young, right offensive mind and you pair him with a Genti, Brock Bowers, and Mendoza. Like the Raiders might be able to turn around quickly. So if I'm going to do that, now I know what you guys are going to say to me. I know what you're going to say to me. Well, if you're thinking like this, Q, how come you're not thinking it with the Giants? What about a Kubiak and LaFleur situation, right? What about a, Kubiak Stefanski type of situation, right? Or Kubiak Stefanski and you bring in Flores for DC. Like, you're bringing in young guys, guys that the stock for some of them has gone up a little bit. Some guys that are kind of resetting the table. Maybe that's what Brady's looking for if he has a lot more say than we envision. But if Harbaugh wants to go to a spot and it's kind of ready-made with that young quarterback that's showing you a little bit of something, then I still go back. And again, I look at the Giants right now. That's the way I look at it. And I think the most important question, any team interviewing John Harbaugh, the most important question you're going to ask him ultimately, I would think, how much power do you really want? How much power do you really want? How much say do you really want? Because that can cause some friction. That can cause some friction. That's all. Matt with 2 first-round picks. I can't answer that. I don't know. I really don't know. I just don't know. Honestly, I would like Mike Tomlin in Baltimore. So I'm going to paint a Mike Tomlin picture for you. I mentioned this yesterday, and you guys tell me if I'm off base. You guys can check me on this. I'm fine with it. So Mike Tomlin probably walked into the Steelers brass, and they got blown out the other day. I mean, it was just a bad game. You got them to the playoff. You kind of crafted it together, little pieces and parts here and there. And the conversation might have been, again, here's the direction we're going. We don't like to use the word rebuild, but let's just call it for what it is. The Steelers are rebuilding. Even if Tomlin's coming back, it's still a rebuild. It's an older team. You're not going to get anything with Aaron Rodgers. You got some issues on defense. Your offense is extremely limited. So, it's hard for the Rooneys to turn around and say the word rebuild because the franchise has been consistently good, competitive for 25, 30 years. Like, they rarely have down years. It's because they've had 3 head coaches in their franchise history. So somewhere during that conversation, I think, and I'm purely speculating, Tomlin was kind of asked, how much longer do you want to do this? Where do you see us going? What do you think about the quarterback position? All the questions you have when you're kind of doing your exit interview to close out the season. I also believe Tomlin got tired of hearing every loss or during every press conference about his future. Who wants to, after every time there's a loss, somebody says, let's talk about your job security. You're misfiling reports, and at the end of the day, your boss is basically telling you, get your shit together. You're going to be out of a job. Like, you don't want to hear it every day. You don't. Some things are out of your control, right? It's not his fault Rodgers is throwing a pick six or taking sacks or the line's not pass blocking or run blocking. I mean, players make plays, coaches coach. I get it. But ultimately, the coach has to be held accountable. And I would say Tomlin probably took something and probably stuck it in his mind, shuffled it around, and basically said, I get the feeling if I come back, even with my contract, I'm going to have to answer these same friggin' questions every single day. OTAs, draft, combine, training camp, preseason. I don't want to deal with this anymore. If they're going to fire me, fire me. I understand I got a year or 2 left, whatever it is. Here's where I'm at. Now, I'm just paraphrasing. I'm just, again, spitballing. And he decided, to hell with this. I'm not going to give them an opportunity to make me a lame duck or be on the hot seat. And I'm taking off. Hence, I'm stepping down. Whereas maybe it was a little, we're nudging you in this direction. Now, I have nothing to substantiate that. It's purely my opinion. I've seen it before. They did it. The Giants did with Coughlin. Let's just call it for what it is. He didn't step down. They forced him out. So let's go by this. Tomlin decides, I'm going to take a year off. I'll tell you the perfect fit. If the Jets turn around and get that bridge quarterback, like we all believe they're going to get that bridge quarterback, there's no way Aaron Glenn survives another 2-3 win season with the New York Jets. The likelihood of that happening, it's not going to happen. He's not going to be able, especially if this team is bad defensively and they rolled over like dogs. So maybe they have to go the Kyler Murray route. Maybe they have to turn around and get that bridge because now their plan A is kind of shot to shit with this kid going back to Oregon. So they're going to be stuck. So they might struggle, which means the head coach is gone. So if you guys are thinking, what's the landing spot for Tomlin? It's not going to be Baltimore. He's not taking a job right now. He'll go to the booth for a year or just kind of reset. I don't see, I just, when you step down like that and you're forced out or you're on the hot seat, you have to recharge the batteries. And I see a scenario next year where the Jets struggle again because they got a bridge quarterback, whether it's going to be a Kyler Murray, whether it's going to be a Tua. I know they're horrible names to throw out there. I apologize, Jet fans. I apologize. I apologize, Larry. I apologize, Kevin C. I apologize, guys. And then Tomlin, once Glenn's fired, Tomlin takes over the Jets. Like, I see that happening. it almost makes too much sense. And then, oh, by the way, you turn around, you got Tomlin and Harbaugh in New York, which would be crazy. Money Mike. Miami keeps telling me McCarthy is a better fit for the Giants than Harbaugh. He would help Dart develop better. How do you feel about that? I just don't think McCarthy is made for the New York market. I don't, and he doesn't have that bravado, and that's what sells. I know what you're saying. Does he look the part of a Giants head coach? Does Harbaugh look the part of a Giants head coach? Yeah, he does. He does. Kind of that stoic, the wind whipping off of 95 in that stadium, right? He has that NFC East in him. McCarthy is kind of a submissive guy. Now, I gave you the numbers the other day. They're almost identical. And I think the reason, to your friend's point, he wants the consistency, right? Well, they're both consistent. They both won. They won early in their career. Also, McCarthy had Aaron Rodgers and can only win one. That worries me a little bit. McCarthy's track record in the playoffs worries me. Now, I said it a couple weeks ago. Yeah, I would be fine with him. That's before Harbaugh became available. That's before he became available. And the other thing is, why isn't Mike McCarthy getting interviews? Why isn't his name being tossed out there? Because he's not as respected as a guy like Harbaugh or Tomlin. He's just not. Now, if you want to say, well, put that aside, Rich, and that's all great insight, but what about the development of a young quarterback? Then maybe your case is strengthened by, McCarthy developing young quarterbacks. But I also believe you have to have the right offensive coordinator. Look, we saw what the Ravens were able to do with a young Lamar Jackson. So I'm just again kind of throwing it back out there. H chimes in. Q, this is ridiculous. More going back to Oregon. That is a friggin' backbreaker for my Jets. Are you friggin' kidding me? Am I going to go with Newsmeyer? Am I going to go with Simpson? Get the F out of here, Q. Hey, I didn't make the decision. The kid did. Don't blame it on me. Jets got enough problems, right? Tomlin probably taking a year off. Yes, I believe he is. I believe he is. And he actually might, believe it or not, I think Mike Tomlin would be entertaining in front of the camera. And he might kind of like it. Cowher, every year when coaches were fired, what name did we throw out there? Cowher. And we always talked about the retread. Cowher loves being in the booth. Maybe if Tomlin does TV, he likes it. He's a little animated, got a little juice, little edge. He says some kind of quirky stuff. He breaks down film. He knows football. He might turn around and like it, and he's going to get paid handsomely. And here's the other thing. Well, if you actually, fill in the blanks, Matt Ryan's leaving the booth and leaving NFL today because he's taking the Atlanta gig. You don't think networks have already called Mike Tomlin up? ESPN, Fox, CBS. Tomlin, to me, I can see him on the panel. You got JB, you got Cowher, who won a Super Bowl, revered head coach with Pittsburgh. I mean, it might be a little too Pittsburgh heavy, but then you got Nate, and then you got Tomlin. Or maybe you stick him in as an analyst during the games. Nobody knew Tomlin before the Steelers hired him. There are plenty of coaches that are good. We don't know about. It takes a bold organization willing to take a chance and let a coach grow and mature. Correct. But there are some organizations that don't have time for that. That's all I'm saying. And trust me, I know the Giants. They don't have time for that. They don't. They don't. They don't have time for that. This is not a organization it's an organization that expects to be competitive and make the playoffs and win championships, win Super Bowls, and get to the playoffs and win divisions. And they haven't been able to do that. They haven't been able to do that. And maybe, Harbaugh resurrects them 3, 4, 5 years and then decides to retire and they're in good hands. Or maybe he brings over one of his, coordinators that he's familiar with. Or maybe they bring in an offensive coordinator and Harbaugh grooms them. I don't know. That was kind of the whole thought in Kansas City, was it not, with Eric Bieniemy? And then what happened? Eric Bieniemy was the hot offensive coordinator. All I heard was, Q, why isn't Eric Bieniemy getting a job? What the hell's going on with Eric Bieniemy? How come Eric Bieniemy's not interviewing? Is he interviewing poorly? I had James Hasty on my pod. He said Eric Bieniemy does not interview well. I mean, he tried to help Eric Bieniemy. Eric Bieniemy comes off a certain way that rubs teams the wrong way during the interview process. But as soon as Eric Bieniemy decided I'm leaving Big Red Shoulders, Shadow, and he goes to Washington, he burned out with Rivera. So I get the whole give him a shot, give him a shot. Some franchises don't have time to give a guy a shot. They need to get shit right now. They need to figure it out now, sooner rather than later. Or you become what the Browns were for many moons, the Jets were for many moons, the dark years, the dark days of the 77, 78, 79 Giants, or those bad Bucks teams, or those bad Lions teams. You just don't want to go down that path. You don't. You really don't. It's bad football. It's a bad brand of football. It turns the fan base off. You lose the fan base. It's never a good thing. And by the way, for everyone sitting there telling me, well, Harbaugh's too old. Mike Tomlin's 53. Harbaugh's a young 63. Okay? And I remember Harbaugh as a defensive coordinator with Minnesota. He actually was a very good defensive back coach with Tampa Bay because my buddy played for that team back in the day in 2002. So I knew of Tomlin, especially when he went to Minnesota. And he had a great career with the Pittsburgh Steelers. He had a great run. No one's saying Mike Tomlin is done coaching in the NFL. No one's saying Mike Tomlin's not going to have another opportunity, another crack to coach in the NFL. He'll take a year off, he'll regroup, and here we go. But there are franchises, they can't afford to take a shot right now on the young and up-and-coming guy. And by the way, there's not a lot of them. There's, Ben Johnson falling out of a tree. Everyone's looking at Sean McVay, not falling out of a tree. The Lions, I'm going to tell you, the Lions, if you remember, Dan Campbell was with Miami, and Dan Campbell was an intern. Played with the Giants, learned the game, right? Bounced around, was with the Cowboys. I think he was with, obviously, with the Lions, and he was an intern. But the guy was a football savant. And he took the first gig he can get. It was tight ends coach. And then from there, if you recall, and I don't remember the coach in 2014-15, got fired. He was the interim coach. Then he goes to New Orleans. And then he learns under who? He learns under Peyton. And then, boom, the Lions, yes, take a shot on him. And thus far, it's worked out. It's worked out. The Minters, the Haleys, or the Halfleys, and Kingsburys, and the Kubiaks, they're going to get their shots. It's just, certain franchises can't afford. The Giants can't afford to bring in a young head coach and he flames out in 2 years. You just can't. Not after McAdoo, not after Shermer, not after Judge, not after Dayball. You just can't do it. You can't. You just can't do it. Tomlin would definitely get more out of Lamar than John Harbaugh, in my opinion. Who knows? I think there was a disconnect, right? I think there was a rift. I think John Harbaugh, unfortunately, lost the locker room when he didn't put pressure on the offensive coordinator to run the football more against New England in the second half. They had some bad losses. They lost Lamar. He got injured. They were never able to kind of dig themselves into a hole. So, as a reformed Steeler fan, the more I think about it, the more I truly believe Tomlin will never coach again. Saw an IG post yesterday of his daughter committing to college. He's missed so much. But that's life in the NFL as an NFL head coach. Right? And I would never put anything past anyone. No one thought Vermeil was going to keep coming back, and he did. No one thought, Pete Carroll, he thought his time was done in Seattle. Guys, there's only 32 jobs available. And there might be a team, maybe not this year or next year, that says, this guy is the guy we want. This is the guy. This is our fit. He's in the booth, relax a little bit, unwind, maybe looks at things a little differently this part of his career. Um, and now he's got that bug again. And I said this yesterday, or Monday, if you remember, Vince, I actually kind of am leaning towards what you're saying. Like, I think Tomlin is at this point where, hey, man, it's ran its course in the NFL. It's ran its course. He doesn't strike me as, and I'm not saying he doesn't have a love or passion for football. That's not what I'm saying. But there are some guys that, I'm going to step down. I'm just going to, and then there are other guys that are like, yo, man, I got to get back in the gym. I got to get back in the lab. I got to get back in the studio. I got to get back behind the mic. I got to get back to coaching. Like, Harbaugh is like that guy. Like the alpha, alpha, alpha. There are some coaches like that. Like Gruden was like that. McVay is like that. Andy Reid was like that. And then obviously with a lot of the personal stuff, he learned to slow down a little bit. But he was like that. Parcells was that guy. I mean, Belichick is kind of the coup de grace. I got dive right back in there, man. Got to get right back in there. Like some of these guys, their personality, they're cut like that. And you might be right. You might be right. He might turn around and say, you know what? Hey, man, hell of a run. I'm going to be in the Hall of Fame, won a Super Bowl, and I was part of a legacy. Think about Harbaugh and Tomlin, right? It is amazing the run and how many times those two battled and got the better of each other in the AFC North for years, and they won, and they were consistently good and competitive, and they have respect. I mean, it's Pittsburgh fans that chime in that have been hitting me up. I mean, some of them are like, thank freaking God this guy's gone. This guy's out of here. Okay. I thought last year they could have made a move 2 years ago, but I always caution, be careful what you wish for. Now, yes, it ran its course, but sometimes be careful. Be careful. 80 chimes in. Q, did you see the numbers on Moore? Because he's returning to school. Apparently, he gave up a chance to make nearly 50 in guaranteed money. Travis Hunter last year made 46. You can check it, Q. I believe you. I believe you. But you got the NCAA salary cap for all sports, and then you got the above cap NIL. So he's going to go back. He's going to make a boatload of money. And I'm wondering if his representation, hey man, you didn't really have a very good game the other night. Like, go back to school. Right? I'd rather coach the Browns than the Jets. Well, I think there might be an upside if they actually had both franchises have a quarterback, right? So you need that. The Browns, we don't know where they're going to go with the quarterback. We just don't know. Nobody knows. You can't tell me right now in January that the Browns have made a decision on who their quarterback's going to be. We have no idea. We have absolutely no idea what the hell the Browns are thinking and what they're going to do. The Jets, we know they just lost out on the quarterback. Their plan B, right? Every team has time to grow with a coach. They just choose not to. Leadership is getting people to go along with a plan that doesn't sound great. Everyone outside Philly hated the process. They did. Yeah, but what did it get them? That's a horrible example. The process. They haven't won shit. They can't even get out of the second round. I mean, people still pushing that narrative with the Sixers. That's crazy. It's a laughable franchise. They purposely tanked and put a piss poor product on the floor, and they haven't done anything since. Like, at least get to the Eastern Conference Finals, win an NBA championship. Then we're going to say it worked. A joke. An absolute joke. That's why the NBA stepped in. Right? Come on. Money Mike, who do you have in the Super Bowl? Who you have winning? I said in August. I said this in August, and you can check the tape. Now, one of the teams already out. I had Denver and Washington. I had Denver winning it all. And the guys on the chat right now, they will confirm that. They will confirm that. And I'm not saying you're limiting a coach to 2 to 3 years. That's not what I'm saying. I said you don't want it to be bad. Like, you've got a young quarterback in Jackson Dart. you can ill afford to waste early years with him. You just can't. That's all I'm saying. That's it. And I know what you're saying and you're pushing back on it, and that's okay. You're allowed to. I appreciate it. I think ultimately, though, you bring in Harbaugh, it's a 5-year deal. It's a 5-year deal. He'll be 68 at the end of the contract. They make the playoffs. They win a playoff game. Who the hell knows? Right? My son texted me yesterday and was so sad. Tomlin's literally the only coach he's ever had with the Steelers. Young fans like him are really broken up about this. Yeah, because it is. Listen, I think I was upset. I mean, I'm going to be honest. Now, I was a Parcells guy. I love Parcells, but I knew when the Giants won in 90, Parcells wanted to retire. And then obviously you had the mixed bag with the Jets and then cooking the groceries and the Patriots. And then, we're going to have the coach, Belichick, Parcells, and then boom, going back to Dallas. It broke me up because Parcells was my guy. I was really hurt as a Giant fan. I mean, I railed them on the air for days after they forced out Coughlin. After they forced out Coughlin, I was like, "Oh, you got to be kidding me!" It was horrible what they did to Tom Coughlin. But many believed that the game passed Coughlin by, and the game that I think pretty much put the nail in the final coffin was that Carolina game. Not because they lost the game, it's because Beckham was acting like a jerk off. He was acting like an immature clown against Josh Norman. And everyone realized this guy, no one can reel in Beckham. And that's one of the reasons he's bounced around the NFL. That bothered me, the way they pushed out Coughlin. He deserved more. He deserved more. And you remember he stood there in that press conference and looked at Eli Manning, who had tears coming down his face, and said, "Eli, it's not your fault." Like, Coughlin was is a stand-up guy. He's a Hall of Fame head coach. He turned around 2 franchises. He's a Hall of Fame head coach. You're talking about 2 of the most improbable runs in Super Bowl history. 2 of them belong to the Giants. Just unheard of, those runs. But the way they treated him, because after they won, they tried to milk a couple more years out of Eli, and they just drafted poorly. That wasn't his fault. 9-7, 7-9, 6-10, 6-10. Got to make a change. Got to make a change. And they did. They made a change, and it didn't work out. They made another change. It didn't work out. They made another change. It didn't work out. They made another. This is what I'm saying. You got to get it right. So I get where your son's coming from. I get it. When you only know one guy, it's like having a favorite player. And then being a young kid and, you idolize that player for 10 years. You're 7, 8 years old and you're idolizing him for 10 years and you're 17, 18, 19, and then he retires or he gets traded. It's devastating. The same can be said when you have a rapport and you feel this connection with a head coach. Absolutely. I love Pat Riley. I love Pat Riley with the Knicks. Loved him. But I was like pissed off that he faxed his resignation letter to the Knicks. I'm like, what the hell are you doing? And then to make matters worse, where does he go? He goes to Miami. But I was a Pat Riley guy. Joe Torre, I knew it had to end. Joe Torre was just too loyal to a fault. And you have a great run. Tomlin had a great run. Harbaugh had a great run. Belichick had a great run. Eventually, Andy Reid, we're going to sit back and say, can you imagine Andy Reid? This was the guy Philadelphia couldn't wait to get out of town. And look what he's been able to do with Kansas City. Andy Reid brought not one, but 2 franchises back to glory and respectability and credibility. Don't worry, Jets will find a reason to draft Simpson at 2. No way. Hey, bookmark it right now. I might have, if the Jets draft Simpson, I might have to figure out a way to get you a 6-pack of layup, which I don't drink. I'll try to work that in somehow. No way. Absolutely not. Sign him to a 10-year contract. No way, man. No. I think he was offered like $7 million NIL, right? Simpson, before he jumped the The draft. These NIL deals are, oh man, they're just. God, the Jets can't. You can't draft him. I'm sorry. Go with a bridge. He's not a good quarterback. He's not. Vince, the more I think about it, it is jet-like to do that. It's jet-like to do that. Man chimes in, 17 past 4 o'clock hour. We start at 3:15, but that's okay. There will never be the combination of stand-up, good, great coach like Coughlin. No, never. Definitely a stand-up guy. Kevin chimes in, Q, I love what you're talking about, the elevator pitch, but you're right. They got to tie his hands down and not leave him leave the building. Falcons are going to have something to say about that. The Falcons will have a say. It's crazy what's going on in the NFL. We didn't even get to the games coming up this weekend, right? And I didn't even really, not that it's I don't want to say like a big story or something to monitor, but I still believe Aaron Rodgers played his last game in the NFL. But now with Tomlin stepping down and the Pittsburgh Steelers screwed, the Pittsburgh Steelers might have to turn around and actually coax or convince Rodgers to not retire. The bridge quarterbacks that we're seeing next year, it's going to be crazy. It's going to be, I mean, Justin Fields might turn around and have an opportunity to start for somebody. Who the hell knows? Kyler Murray might be with the Jets. Tua, I know it's a bad contract. Who knows what's going to happen? I still think he remains with the Dolphins, and they're sitting him. Cleveland. How many quarterbacks does Cleveland have right now on that roster? They got 3 quarterbacks, right? They have Sanders, Gabriel. You got Watson. Guys are getting moved. It's going to be absolutely just crazy. Tom and Summers point Q. I listened to you yesterday a little bit. Good points on Patullo. Why now, though? And what direction you think the Eagles are going to go? And who's the guy you think that can help get this offense going? I have no idea why the Eagles decided, or Nick Sirianni decided to. He didn't fire. He stripped, demoted. Why are you going to keep? It's all about semantics and the verbiage. So if Kevin Patullo is no longer the Eagles offensive coordinator, demoted is different than fired. Fired, you're no longer with the organization. So everyone's throwing it out there, and there's still no clarity. Is he still part of the organization? And if so, why? But the point is they made a change. And they had to, but I have no idea. Why did you make it now? Like, if the Philadelphia Eagles wanted to salvage their season, if they wanted to salvage their season and figure out what the hell is going on and how we can make this work, they should have fired Kevin Patullo after the Denver game. After the Giant game. They scored 17 points in back-to-back weeks. But they waited and waited and waited and waited. And the fact that Nick Sirianni decides to rest the starters, that blew up in their face. It bit him in the ass. If you were to ask me at this moment, if I'm an offensive coordinator and I'm looking at the Eagles' job, would I take it if offered? Hands down, yes. If I'm Mike McDaniel, I'm grabbing this job, and I told you why. I told you exactly why. Or if I'm Stefanski, I'm grabbing this job. If I'm Kingsbury, I'm grabbing this job and I'm running with it. I am absolutely running with it. You want to know why? Because I know eventually, if I can show what I can do, then we're really going to expose that head coach who's just basically a placeholder. And if it goes south, owners will sit there and say, well, hold on a second. If we get rid of Sirianni, that's okay. Hey, we got Kevin. We got Mike. We got, interim. Let's see what they can do for a handful of games. Let's see what they can do for half the season. And then who knows? We strip that interim tag. Now, that should light a little spark under Sirianni's ass. And Sirianni also understands I need help. I'm about to be exposed as a fraud, which he probably already is exposed. But point being is he needs help. They got to figure out that offense. The narrative, everyone's saying, oh, Jalen Hurts with another coordinator. Just stop cramming that crap down my throat. I don't want to hear it. That's your narrative that you want to push. It's just you're the quarterback in the NFL, man. If you can't make reads, if you don't understand how to go through your progressions, that's on you. I don't care. You can keep going back to college and Lincoln Riley and then Doug and Steichen and Johnson and Moore and Patullo. I don't care. Your job when you make $255 friggin' million, $51 million a year, get the ball in the friggin' receiver's hands. Make sound decisions. Don't take bad sacks. Don't turn the ball over. That has nothing to do with a coordinator. That's coaching. That is coaching. That's it. It's coaching. That's all that is. The head coach designs a friggin' offense. The coordinator calls the plays. The players make plays. It's what I grew up with. So we're going to say, oh, the lack of continuity in the play calling. Man, you could have stuck a child back there to draw plays better than Kevin Patullo. Your kids are probably, if they tune in and never watch a show, or you guys, sports parents with kids that play sports or youth sports, you're watching them play, flag football, touch football, high school football, probably drawing plays in the sand that are more creative than what we see with Kevin Patullo. So when McCoy comes out and says what he says, basically dumb down the offense, well, which is true? Which is true? Is it they had to dumb it down because Jalen Hurts doesn't understand and recognize certain blitz schemes, certain defensive alignments? Or did they dumb it down because the offensive coordinator doesn't know what the hell he's doing? Like, obviously, there is a disconnect. And by the way, the last time I checked, Jalen Hurts has gone to 2 Super Bowls playing in Nick Sirianni's system. Because, again, the head coach designs the offense. It's not even up for debate. The coordinator calls the plays. Let's get on the same page. Here's the offense. Here's the scheme. We're going West Coast. What do we know? It's predicated on what? Quick release, slants, routes, boom, boom, boom. Bill Walsh, let's make it work. I mean, it's just, I'm so over this. Some of these narratives that I got to hear from Eagles fans. Like, take your L and move on, will you? Seriously. Take your L. I mean, where the hell are the Eagles fans? It's friggin' Wednesday. You just fired your offensive coordinator. You know why you haven't come out of the woodwork? Because you got your ass handed to you Sunday against the 49ers. And you were barking. Well, guess what? You going to bite, little doggy? Where are you? Where are you? You lasted one more week than the Giants, the Cowboys, and Washington. I almost called them, you know what? The Commanders. I don't want to hear it anymore. Man, I'll tell you. These fan bases, unbelievable. We got any breaking news? Marcus Freeman, that's a name too to watch. That's another name for the pro ranks. That's all. All right, let me give you some numbers. So it's a Wednesday right now, movement-wise on these games. Denver's laying 1.5 against the Bills. 49ers are a 7-point dog against Seattle. I'm torn. I want the corporation to win, but I'm a slinging Sammy Darnold guy. But I understand the corporation has backed me a lot of times on the air. Texans and the Patriots Sunday, Rams and the Bears, and that line's dropped a little bit. That Texans-Pats game is fascinating to me because I guess now we can have this argument or we can have the conversation. Would this be considered the Patriots' real first legit test this season? Now, granted, they played Buffalo twice, but now you're in the playoffs against a very good defense in Houston. CJ Stroud scares the hell out of me. His decision-making is sometimes, what? Like, my man, you're a pro quarterback. Secure the football. And I know it's Wednesday, but I think the Texans, they're going to hang in there against New England. They're going to hang in there on the road. Drake May really hasn't seen a defense like he's going to see with the Texans. And then you got the Rams and the Bears. Give me your thoughts early right now on these matchups. We'll get you caught up to speed on some of these injuries as well. 425, got about 20 to play with. A little power hour. Obviously, we're over the hour, but that's okay. We got more comments coming in. We want to read them off. Quickie timeout. Don't forget, we're powered by our good friends over at Fresh Roasted Coffee, Three Brooks Bourbon. Get ready with tea. It's a Woosah Wednesday edition of On Q. And thus far, you guys have not made me get all woosah on this Wednesday, mid-January, the 14th, 2026. All right, quick timeout. We'll come back on the other side. All right, 4:30 on a Whistle Wednesday edition of On Cue. Rich Quinones here. We're powered by our good friends over at Fresh Roasted Coffee. Had about 5 cups in the last 2.5 hours. 20% off your first purchase. BYP 20. We're also on SR 1029 FM The Game, Coastal Sports Digital Network, Odyssey, YouTube channel. If you guys like the content, like, comment, and subscribe. And again, I apologize for the first 5 minutes. The EV Mux, the streaming platform, kaputs. What else is new? Let's get back to some comments. Vince chimes in. No way you think Allen gets it done against the #1 defense and your Broncos. No way you pick against yourself. That's not fair. Yeah, I'm really stuck between a rock and a hard place. I mean, look, I picked Denver to go all the way and win the Super Bowl. You know, I mean, would that be deemed a cowardly act, by the way? Like, we'll straw poll it. You know, we'll straw poll it, right? Is that what they call a straw? What's the poll they call? A straw poll? I don't know. But let's just throw it out there. I guess for sentiment and argument's sake, and for being fully transparent, because I predicted the Denver Broncos, or picked the Denver Broncos to go all the way and win it. And Bo Nix, I even gave you the numbers, if you remember, what he was going to do in the Super Bowl when they won it. Do I now? I mean, and I'm a Josh Allen guy, but I guess I have to stick with my pick, do I not? I have to. I got to stick with my pick. Kiki knows it. Kiki's about to bark. Kiki's about to let you know. Do I stick with the pick? Do I go with Denver? I mean, she's kind of giving me the look. I think she says, yeah, ride with Bronco ball. Okay. I mean, I believe that's the fair thing to do, right? I mean, I can't turn around. That would be devastating to our Denver Broncos fans. If I jacked them up, got them all excited in August, and I had the proclamation that the Denver Broncos were going to defeat the Washington Commanders in the Super Bowl, I gotta figure out, where the hell is that? I typed it up too. Oh, here you go. Denver 34, Washington 31, Bo Nix the MVP. I even gave you the score. Now, let's just, can we adjust it? Can I get rid of Washington? Can I put another team in there? I mean, is that fair? But I gave you the score. I gave you the score. Oh, here are my, how about this? These were my divisional winners. The Bills, Denver, the Texans, the Ravens, Cincy, and the Chargers. That's not bad. I mean, I spit the bit in the NFC. These were my picks in the NFC. Eagles, Cardinals, Bucks, Lions, Packers, Panthers, not bad, in Washington. Oh, what a mixed bag. I don't even think I should show that graphic anymore. That's horrible. You're a talking head. You would be the first to stick with your pick. You go ahead and take your guy, Allen. No, I'm not doing it. I'm not doing it. I picked Denver. I'm sticking with Denver. I'm sticking with Denver. I'm going to do that. Resident tape marking expert has been MIA since Monday. I have no idea what's going on. Is that the ghost of Luca Brasi? Maybe he's swimming with the fishes. You know what? The more I read this, Vince, I am going to be the first to stick with my pick. I'm going to do it. Denver Broncos. I'm going to give you it right now. How about that? I mean, I would like to get into the game a little more. It's going to be a fun game to watch. Now, as Vince loves when I say, will Superman throw on that cape at some point during this game? The 49ers, Seattle, I think the 49ers are going to have to score 24 to 28 points in that game. I really do. I think Seattle is going to be cooking. They're going to be juiced. They're going to be jacked up, laying 7, 8 o'clock kickoff. That stadium is going to be absolutely noisy, rocky. And then you got the Sunday games, Texans and the Patriots. That should be going. Look, the Rams and the Bears is going to be a good game as well. All the games during the wild card weekend were extremely close and competitive. The Rams win by 3. The Bears win by 4. The Bills win by 3, Vince. The 49ers won by 4. The only game that wasn't competitive was the Patriots and the Chargers game, and that's because Josh Herbert couldn't get out of his own way. And then the Texans absolutely destroyed the Steelers, but that game was 7-6 going into the half. What were Rodgers' final numbers? 17 of 33, a buck 46, and he had to pick 6, and they sacked him 4 times. I told you they were going to get to him. Stroud was 21 of 30, 250 for a touchdown and a pick. And some of his decision making is just, it's not good. LJ chimes in. Q, did you hear my Boston Red Sox making a move today? Yeah, I saw that. You're not the only Boston Red Sox fan, by the way, that tunes into the show. I saw that. It's not a bad move. It really isn't. I mean, you might overpay, but you're bringing in a proven arm, and that's obviously that's what you want. They overachieved last year, the Boston Red Sox. So the Swarsdale, to me, what's it, 5 years, 130? I think Baltimore was in play, but the Red Sox. You talk about their depth; it's not bad. Red Sox, they're going to have an opportunity to make some noise. They are, they really are. And you're seeing exactly what they're doing, what their game plan is. They're starting to stock up a little bit, right? Acquiring Sonny Gray. They got a couple other arms in there. In that Gray deal, would you get a Contreras in the swap as well? I mean, Gray is pretty much their number 2 starter, right? That they're looking for. But I like Ranger Suarez. I do. I like Ranger Suarez. Yeah, baseball hot stove is definitely, it's hot stove. I mean, we always know it's kind of heating up. But that's, the Tucker deal. I mean, look, you got to give the Mets a little, credit here. They're trying to show the fan base because they missed out on a lot in this offseason, especially losing Pete Alonso. They want to try to make a splash, right? Do they not? So that's one of the reasons that they are going after Kyle Tucker. Scotty Boy chimes in. Q Seahawks or the rest of the field, honestly. In the NFC, I've liked Seattle pretty much all season long. You guys know that. I've mentioned Seattle multiple times, pretty much every week. I thought Seattle and the Rams were probably your 1-2 most complete teams coming out of the NFC. Now, it's not my Sam Darnold bias, but I like the coach. He's a really good coach. He's a young coach. These guys, they fly to the football. They turn the football over. The only you're talking about coming out of winning it all. That's a good question. When you say the field, I'm sorry. I misunderstood. NFC, I would still like Seattle. It's going to be, listen, 49ers are going to give them a fight. The 49ers are going to throw their best shots at Seattle, and they might hang around for half. Who knows? And maybe Seattle pulls away. Everything comes down to the common denominator when you talk about all these teams in the playoffs. It's the quarterback position. But the common denominator when you talk about Seattle and we talk about one player, it's Sam Darnold. Which Sam Darnold is going to show up? Is it the Darnold that can go, 65%, 20 and 28, 288, 3 touchdowns? Or is it the Darnold that will have those back-breaking turnovers, 2 picks the first 3 series, rattled, footsteps, seeing ghost? If that's the Sam Darnold that Seattle gets, they're in trouble. I would like to believe that Darnold, I believe Sam Darnold is going to shut a lot of people up. And he doesn't need to put up sexy stats. All Sam Darnold needs to do at this point, win the game and get to the NFC Championship, and you roll the dice. Whether it's going to be a Bears team or a Rams team, that is a tough, tough out. It is. It's going to be a tough out for them. It's just we need to see Darnold do it in the big moment. And he had a wonderful season last year against Minnesota. That's why Seattle decided to pay him what they did. And if you recall, everyone said Seattle's making a mistake. They're going to miss Geno Smith. Geno Smith had a horrible, horrible year with the Raiders, one of the worst of his career. They paid Sam Darnold like Minnesota. You know, the risk to reward for Minnesota, it was a low risk, high reward. And Sam Darnold helped them win 14 games. They lost the Sunday night game. He played poorly in the playoffs. It happened. But he was able to cash in because a team, a franchise felt, hey, this is the missing piece. We can't go any further with Geno Smith. So now Sam Darnold has to reward Seattle's faith by going out and playing good football and winning football and getting this team. Listen, if they get to the NFC Championship and Darnold plays well and they lose on a last second field goal, you can live with that. But if Sam Darnold goes out and he stinks up the joint and he throws 3 picks and the 49ers go on the road and beat Seattle, even though there's familiarity between these teams, and they upset the Seattle Seahawks with everything the way it's broken in the NFL this season and postseason, then on Monday, the narrative, the conversation is going to be, you can't get it done with Sam Darnold. What the hell were they thinking? Look, in the NFL, I know everyone will sit there and say you have to have a young quarterback. That's not necessarily true. You can win in the NFL with, a veteran guy. And I understand, the Bo Nixes, the Drake Mays, the Trevor Lawrence, the CJ Strouds, the Josh Allen, the Justin Herbert, they're all under 30 years of age. Now you're talking AFC, right? NFC, different story. And I know it is a young man's game, and these quarterbacks, they're up and coming, they're faster, they're quicker, stronger arms, they move around, they give a little more mobility in the pocket. I didn't even mention Lamar Jackson too, and or Mahomes, but you know where I'm going, or Burrow. I understand that. But there's something to be said about a guy like a Baker Mayfield or a guy like Sam Darnold, that has pretty much been chewed up and spit out, right? And now they got an opportunity to resurrect their career. They got an opportunity to really silence the critics. And I think if you're Sam Darnold, he's going to embrace that. He's going to embrace that. Sam Darnold's a likable guy. He is. There's more pressure on Josh Allen than Sam Darnold. Because I think with Darnold, you're like, well, if he reverts back to the pumpkin, it was a hell of a ride. But Allen, there's too much at stake for Josh Allen. There's way too much at stake for Josh Allen and Sean McDermott for that matter. And that's going to be a very tough draw for the Buffalo Bills. Now, if they get past Denver, then yeah, I'm going to sit there and say they're going to go to the Super Bowl. Because if they get past that defense, what makes me think they can't get past the Texans if the Texans get past New England? Seattle, to me, is the most complete team in the NFL. They can run the football. They play defense. They're getting very good quarterback play, and they can force turnovers. And that's a recipe for success, especially in January and February. As much as I love my pick of August of the Denver Broncos, the reality is this. The Denver Broncos, I don't know what I'm getting with that offense. I know what I'm getting with that defense, but I don't know what I'm getting with that offense. The reality of the Rams is, as great as Stafford is, sometimes he will have a very piss-poor pick. And you can also, you can move the ball against the Rams. The reality of Chicago, young team. What did that win, that comeback, did it take out of them the emotional letdown? Against Green Bay, Caleb Williams, still a young quarterback. CJ Stroud, young quarterback. Out of all the quarterbacks in the NFL, you got 2 that we've seen it before, and really 1 in Stafford because he's won before, and Allen has had deep runs. You're talking veteran guys. Veteran guys. You got a young Bo Nix, you got a young Brock Purdy, you got a young Stroud, a young May, and a young Williams. Stafford is one. And then you turn around, you got Sam Darnold. You got Darnold. And it's not like Darnold is 33. Darnold's only 28. But I got to see it. I got to see it come Saturday. I need to see that Darnold that is going to have that peak performance. You know, Sam Darnold can shut a lot of people up. If the 49ers are up 6 and there's 2 minutes to go, one timeout, and Seattle's got to go 80 yards to win the game. And he sticks it in the back of the end zone. It's going to be a brutal, heartbreaking loss for the 49ers. But if you're a Darnold fan, Seattle fan, you're like, okay, now we got something. Now we're in the midst of a special season. That's what I want from Sam Darnold. That's what I want. I want that from any quarterback, especially if you believe you have a franchise quarterback. You know, can Drake May go 80 yards late? You know, maybe a wide receiver goes down. Maybe the running back isn't gaining any yardage. They're not running the football. Can Bo Nix do that? Can CJ Stroud do that? Can Caleb Williams do that? I've seen Josh Allen do it. I've seen Matthew Stafford do it. I've seen once or twice Darnold do it in the regular season, big spot in the playoffs. I need to see it. Can some of these young quarterbacks do it? Now you're really going to see if you've got a legit franchise quarterback. You're going to see it this weekend because young quarterbacks, sometimes they're just young enough and naive enough to not know any better. They don't understand the magnitude of the moment. They're playing loose. There's no pressure. They're out there having fun and they're slinging it. Let the chips fall where they may. Am I going to see that from Nix? Am I going to see that from Purdy? Am I going to see that from Stroud? Am I going to see that from Williams? Am I going to see that from May? You know, there's pressure on New England, and I'm going to tell you why. Because if somehow Buffalo beats Denver and the Patriots win, the Patriots are hosting the AFC Championship game. And now you got a young quarterback with a proven head coach who was a cast-off in Tennessee, who won a lot as a player with the New England Patriots. Now, all of a sudden, you're sitting pretty, and you're hosting the AFC Championship against who? One of your rivals, one of your bitter rivals in the Buffalo Bills. And that's their swan song. Like, this is it for Buffalo. If they beat Denver and they got to meet the Pats and go on the road, like, the window is there for the Buffalo Bills. You got to get through a very damn good defensive unit in Denver and a very good defensive or overall very good team in Denver that won 14 games. If you get past them, and oh my goodness, can you imagine if the Texans figure out a way to beat New England? There's no excuses for Josh Allen. And I'm not taking anything away from the Texans because they're a very good team defensively. But if things start to open up, you got to take advantage of it. You have to. If not now, when? And the argument that I've been making, no Burrow, no Mahomes, no Jackson, that's fair. But I'm also doing a disservice if I don't recognize just how good the Patriots, Texans, and Broncos defense is. Like, those are tough outs. Those are tough ask of Josh Allen. But if you're a Hall of Fame quarterback, a transcendent quarterback, a franchise quarterback, you go on the road and you beat the Broncos. And then if you have to go on the road and beat New England, you beat New England. I just don't see other. To me, there's not a option C or scenario C or scenario 3. Like, you have to say there's pressure on Josh Allen. I don't believe there's pressure on Purdy. I think there's more pressure on Darnold. I mean, that unit is banged up for San Francisco. Is there pressure on Stroud, May? I think expectations. You know, there's probably some pressure on Stafford because, listen, this might be your swan song. You're going on the road. You know, Stafford, Caleb Williams, who do you trust more? The vets, the spotlight's on them. And we got to see. We got to see exactly what they're going to do. We have to. We have to. We have to. We have to. Tish's private jet is still in Teterboro. Hasn't left since arriving with Harbaugh earlier today. Just saying. Chino 7287. Mi hermano, ¿qué tal? ¿Qué pasó contigo? Chino is getting excited. He has the thoughts of John Harbaugh dancing in his little blue giant head. Who knows? I told you, they need to basically just, strap him to a chair. And, you're going to get all the, oh my God, John Harbaugh, he was in the building. They ordered a couple, Sicilian pies and maybe a little, you know, a little, a little sweet peppers and some pork sandwich. Oh, and he had this kind of bread. And oh, you know what? They didn't have any wine. They had a nice little coffee. And right. And I'm sure that Harbaugh met with Jackson Dart because that's your carrot. That's your dangling out there. That's your dangling out there. Here you go, franchise quarterback. Take us to the promised land, which is nice. It's a nice ring, right? All right, got to start wrapping it up. Fast approaching the 5 o'clock hour on Woosah Wednesday. You guys have been fantastic. Hung with me for an hour and a half. We are going to try to squeeze in a show tomorrow. Again, the hoops, the overseas, 12-hour time difference. That's what I'm working with, guys. It's a 12-hour time difference. So you got to factor this in. While you guys are sleeping, counting sheep, let's just say audio test 11:30 p.m. Then all of a sudden, live 12. Now, that's what's going to happen. This is going to be brutal. Now, listen to the setup. And I'm not complaining. I'm not complaining. But here's the scenario. I'm going to give you the lay of the land for the rest of the week. So I got to cut Back Your Play. So Lloyd's going to join me tomorrow. That'll be up on Amazon, Spotify, Apple, and that airs on 48 WWO in New York, Saturdays and Sundays. If you haven't watched BYP, you're missing. We're giving you winners every week. We've been absolutely crushing it with the picks. So playoff time, a little more condensed version, lesser games, 40 minutes, 45 minutes. Super Bowl will do a full hour. But subscribe to the YouTube channel. That's all free content. It's we don't. No one has to pay. It's all free content. So we got to cut that. Then we got the hoops. We got the overseas dimes. We got to cut that with the time difference, interviewing players in different countries. Then obviously, we'll try to bang out the show tomorrow. Then, as I mentioned, Thursday and the Friday, you're talking 12 to 7, 7 straight hours on the air. Friday, 1, 2, 3, 5 games. So what'll happen is 11:30, 12. These games running clock, 10-minute quarters, 2-minute intermission. Yeah, I'm telling you right now. See that. But people ask. They ask, so I'm explaining it to them. It's like someone said to me the other day, "When do you sleep?" Do I? I mean, honestly, do I? Let's just call for what it is. So we're going 11:30 at night audio test, 12 o'clock on air, ripping off 5 games, getting done at 7:30 in the morning. The dog's up, wants to play, wants to eat, has to go outside. Number 1, number 2, take your pick, and then I'm up. That's Thursday, Friday, Saturday. Now, let's just be honest too. Let's be fully transparent. I got a lot of guys chiming in, first-time listeners. They want to know when you're going to be on the air. I don't want to disappoint people. You guys are loyal. You guys are investing your time with me a couple hours a day, and I'm grateful for that. Now, could I have taken the easy way out? Could I have run away from the fire like some of our viewing audience, the Bunker Boys with the Eagles? I could have done that and decided, you know what, I'm exhausted. And I said yesterday, check the YouTube channel. I don't know if we're going to fire off, but we fired off today. So you can, here we go all you want. You can juice box it. You can say whatever you want, but we're here. We're here. Now, the question is on Friday. Here's the question. The question is on Friday. Bronco Ball, Seattle Madman, I know you're going to be part of it. Where are the Bunker Boys? Like, where are the Eagles fans over the last 24 to 48 hours? I mean, that has to be talked about a little bit. I think on Friday's show, we might have to investigate that because it's very disheartening. They finally fired their offensive coordinator. Oh, here we go. Expectation is that John Harbaugh will also meet with the Titans and Falcons over the next few days. Harbaugh is still in New York, and it seems they are putting on a full court press to prevent him from leaving the building, which is exactly what I said. Don't let him leave the building. Listen, Offer him the deal. Offer him the contract. Get it on the table. Get it done. Sorry, Kiki. Get it done. All right. Now we got to start wrapping up. 5 o'clock hour. Don't forget, download the Odyssey app. Check out Coastal Sports Digital Network. Go to the YouTube channel. Mark in Wallingford chimes in. Q, I don't need to hear every friggin' detail about your day. We get it. You're busy. No, that's not why that's not why I'm saying. I just want you guys to know I absolutely love coming on the air and you guys chiming in. That's all I was saying. I just wanted to give you the lay of the land. That's it. Because what happens is if you don't check out the alerts on the YouTube channel, you're not going to know when I'm on. Fresh roasted coffee, 20% off. BYP20. Don't forget, Play It Again Sports, 2 locations, Deptford and Mount Laurel. And of course, our good friends over at Get Ready with Tea and Three Brooks Bourbon. What do we got here? Dear Lord, I'm actually anxious on this. No, we don't need you to be anxious. We don't want anxious. We want, you're anxious on Harbaugh? Is that what you're anxious on? We don't want you to be anxious. When you come on the air, when you chime into the show, we don't want anyone to be anxious. We want you to sit back, relax, have a little fresh roasted coffee, a little hot toddy, and we talk a little sports. That's all. That's all. We don't need to be anxious. But Harbaugh has not left the building, as we like to say. Closing out with Jackson Dart. Steeler Dan. He's one of my all-time guys. Wants to know, Q, what direction do you think the Steelers are going to go now that Tomlin has stepped down? Listen, I gave you the name Flores. How about Marcus Freeman? How about Marcus Freeman to the Steelers? I mean, that's, do you think that I know that he doubled down and said he's not leaving the NFL and he's expected to stay at Notre Dame. But if you are the Steelers, you try to push him and make a run, right? Freeman's a hell of a coach. He's a hell of a coach. And now you're preparing for life after Mike Tomlin, the guy that's guided you for 19 years. And Freeman already said he's going back to Notre Dame. But he's also, he has interest in the NFL. We can't deny that. We can't deny that. I mean, that's, now you guys wanted that young guy. And I threw it out for the Giants too, but you guys kiboshed it a couple weeks ago. And when Costco came on, he basically said Freeman's not going to the NFL right now. But Freeman kind of has those Tomlin Cowher characteristics, right? So now you're kind of embarking on a new day in Pittsburgh, and you've had great success with those 2 head coaches. Now you've got a guy that's young, up and coming, and kind of fits the bill. So I don't know. You're anxious on the Giants. Okay, anxious on the Giants. Oh, Steelers. Stefanski. Oh, Stefanski is the perfect fit for the Steelers. Oh, my goodness. Man. Does Stefanski get a head coaching opportunity right away? I can see Stefanski in Miami. I can see Stefanski in Tennessee. I cannot see Stefanski with the Pittsburgh Steelers. I just can't. I can't. Especially if the Pittsburgh Steelers believe that, well, think about it. Yeah, the rival, right? Yeah, I don't see it. That's a long shot. I don't see it. Miami, maybe. Tennessee. Atlanta moved on from Raheem Morris pretty fast. They finished the year strong. They got rid of him after 2 seasons. But now it's a different dynamic with Matt Ryan as president of football ops. So Ryan's pretty much going to choose the head coach. That's why the connection with Harbaugh is interesting. don't discount Atlanta. I don't think Stefanski, I think Ryan thinks Stefanski is a good offensive mind, but probably not head coach material. Now, if you're talking about the odds, Harbaugh's plus 300, Stefanski's plus 210. Do with that as you will. Kubiak, what happens if Seattle offensively, they have this great run with Darnold, they get to the Super Bowl and win it. Kubiak, now his stock has risen. I think Flores' stock has risen. Defensively, Minnesota played well second half of the season. LaFleur, I don't know because they haven't fired him. Mike McCarthy, McDaniel's an interesting name. And Tomlin, which would be hilarious, we just don't believe that's going to happen. He's going to take a year off. So to your point, I'm not a big. I think Stefanski. I'm going to tell you why. If the Giants miss out on Harbaugh and they hired Stefanski, I wouldn't be pissed. I would be disappointed. Like Harbaugh would be my first choice. But I think there's something off that happened in Cleveland with Stefanski and the GM and the players and the whole issue with the quarterbacks. And does Stefanski want to go in a spot where there's no quarterback? That's the other thing. I mean, hell, he had 4 quarterbacks in that room with Cleveland. And you never really had quarterback number 1. Now you're going to Pittsburgh. You don't even know who your quarterback's going to be. Does he want to go into a spot where he doesn't know who his quarterback's going to be? At least Atlanta, you believe it's going to be Penix. The Titans, you believe it's going to be Cam Ward. Miami, not so much because to his contract, he's probably not going to play another snap. I don't know if Stefanski, would it be comical because AFC North and you're rotating coaches and here you go? Would the Pittsburgh Steelers fans, speak to me? Is this the hire you want, Stefanski? But I just thought there was I don't want to say power struggle disconnect when it came to the decision making regarding the quarterback, and there was too much fluff and nonsense going on with the reps and Sanders and Gabriel and then Flacco and back and forth. I don't know if Stefanski, the way it flamed out, will have an opportunity to get a head coaching gig right away. Now, we know the NFL is cynical, and we know sometimes these franchises are desperate. I think Harbaugh will get that spot because he's highly sought no matter what. I think after Harbaugh, you have to mention McCarthy. Forget about Tomlin. After McCarthy, you would probably say McDaniel over Stefanski. And I think these guys are going to have to try their hand at coordinator first and then rebuild their resume, right? That's why. Tomlin, because of his contract, he's done. He's done. He's done. He's done. He's done. Stefanski needs a strong GM, in my opinion. Okay, so there you go. So with that being said, where are you placing him? And you're right, they didn't have the right quarterback. I don't believe the starting quarterback is on the Cleveland Browns. I don't believe the starting quarterback for the Cleveland Browns is on the roster right now. I don't believe that. I honestly don't believe that. And I think, GMs and owners, they talk a lot. They're constantly having conversations. Constantly. So if I'm Stefanski or a Mike McDaniel or a Mike McCarthy, I know that this might be my last shot, right? Especially Stefanski and McDaniel because of how goofy it got in their scenarios and situations. So I know it might be my last shot to get a coaching gig in the NFL, especially the way it ended in Miami with Tua, and especially the way it ended in Stefanski with Cleveland. I have to now, as much as there's only 32 of these jobs, now follow me, is only there's 32 of these jobs, I need to make sure it's the right fit for me. Because you can hire a Stefanski and McDaniel and fire them in 2 or 3 years, and it doesn't make your franchise look bad. You can't bring in a Harbaugh or a Tomlin and fire these guys after 2 or 3 years. Because then everyone's sitting there saying, well, wait a second. It's not the coach. It's the GM. It's the owner. Look how this franchise is being run. These guys that I mentioned, they have to rebuild up their body of work and resume. And the other thing, too, is, and I know a couple guys have pointed it out, franchises pointed out, Q, I don't understand why McCarthy's name's not being thrown out there, because he's not held in the same, high regard, esteem that a Tomlin and or a Harbaugh is. That's just a fact. That's one of the reasons that McCarthy's not interviewing or his name's not being floated around all over the place. And if you stick Mike McCarthy's resume next to Harbaugh and Tomlin, it's almost like Kirby Puckett and Don Mattingly with the stats. They're nearly identical. These guys all have the same thing in common. They start off like gangbusters, and they had great teams, but they only won once. But they were consistent. They made the playoffs. If you need 10, 11, 12 wins, here we go. Division championships, here we go. But the Steelers, Tomlin, the Steeler fan was getting frustrated because they haven't won playoff games. And they get blown out in the first round, and it's ran its course. The Baltimore Ravens fans was getting frustrated because why is this guy not taking over play calling? What's his obsession with Monken? Why in the world can't they run the football with Derrick Henry? What's going on with Lamar Jackson? He's the franchise quarterback. He's not happy. And then McCarthy, the knock is, yeah, he's good for 10, 11 wins, but come playoff time, he's going to tighten up. He's going to spit the bit. He's too conservative. Clock management. He doesn't understand the feel, the flow of the game. So there's all pros and there's certain cons. Because Harbaugh's on the market, I got to dismiss McCarthy. I got to wave him off. I got to dismiss him. He wouldn't be my top choice. I would rather take a flyer on Clint Kubiak than Mike McCarthy. Kubiak is a good young offensive coordinator. LaFleur, who knows? I think LaFleur's in trouble because policy decided in August we're not going to give him a contract extension. So even though he hasn't been fired yet, it doesn't mean he's not going to get fired. And then, the retreads that we talked about. Daboll will have to be a coordinator. Brian Daboll will have to rebuild his brand, kind of like Robert Saleh did, right? Robert Saleh, hot coordinator with the 49ers, goes to the Jets and it flames out. Now, a lot of that had to be with the GM and obviously Aaron Rodgers. It didn't help that Robert Saleh is head coach of a professional franchise is texting with Joe Beningo about game planning, never good. And that gets leaked out because everyone knows Joe B's got a big mouth, right? But now he's going back to San Fran. They're in the divisional round. And that defense is playing really well with every single solitary stud on the defensive side of the football hurt. His stock is going back up. He might not interview, but there's going to be interest in Robert Saleh. Now, he might wait another year, but he went back as a coordinator to rebuild his brand, to wipe out that nasty stench of what happened with the Jets. Daboll's got to do the same thing. I think Stefanski and McDaniel have to do the same thing. That's why if I'm Stefanski or McDaniel and the Eagles call me up, I'm grabbing that job. I'm grabbing that coordinator position because you got a Medi-Raid offense, right? You do. You have an offense that could score and you can move the football. And I also believe that Nick Sirianni eventually is going to get fired. Hafley and Flores, I think Flores, you're talking about the combination. I think Flores, very good defensive coordinator. I like to see him get a crack as a head coach, but you got to stick him with a team that's identity is defense. Like Flores would have been perfect with New England, with the Texans, with Denver, right? Ready-made defenses. Now, Denver's a different animal because Peyton it's working out because he wanted to groom and tutor a young quarterback in Bo Nix. That's his quarterback. That's his guy, right? Russell Wilson was never his guy. Hafley is a name that's been floating around. Absolutely. Minter, that's a name that's been floating around. These teams are going to take a shot with some of these guys. All right, up against it, guys. Great stuff. We're going to try to fire off tomorrow. Appreciate all the new viewers and you guys commenting in. You guys are fire Aaron Glenn. All right, what is that? $1.99? Listen. I'd like that how that pops up right now. Fire Aaron Glenn for $1.99. All right. Are you guys actually contributing to the show? Thank you very much. I told you the content's for free. The content is for free. What do we got there? Janet Rossi. What do we got there? We got a Janet Rossi sighting? No. Janet Rossi in 5C ready made. Yes. Yes. Janet Rossi in 5C. And I appreciate that. Thank you very much. I like that handle, DBR handle 2019. Appreciate the kind words, my friend. Definitely subscribe, share with your friends. Busy show tomorrow. A lot more NFL talk, coaching carousel. Oh, by the way, we'll get in a little college football. I got to track down Costco for a little bit. Friday, big show. Lloyd Vance, John Bueller. John Bueller from Fanside. And he's going to join us in a 5 o'clock hour. You guys out there, also check out Rich Q on the mic on TikTok. I post a lot of the clips. All the shows are on demand. The audio is going to go up on Amazon, Spotify, also on iTunes, and wherever you get your, as they say, as the young folks say, all your podcast. All right. Appreciate Three Brooks. Get ready with tea. Fresh roast of coffee, plating and sports. We will be back in the Saddle Manana. I believe 4 o'clock will fire off tomorrow. 4 to 6, 2-hour bonanza on a Thursday edition of On Cue. Appreciate all the new commenters and listeners. You guys are fantastic hanging for 2 hours on this Woosah Wednesday edition. You guys have a good Sports Wednesday. As always, be safe, be sound. I'm Rich Quinones. Thanks for joining me for this edition of On Cue. Hasta luego, buen día.